Hello everybody, I'm Jenny Fitterer and welcome to your Libra season workshop. So we're just going to get started and we're going to talk about some of the planetary transits that are happening this season, and then we'll finish as always with a collective tarot reading. So I'm just going to jump right in, and I'm going to be checking my notes on the side here, so if my eyes go over this way, that's what's going on. So all times that I'm going to be talking about are going to be in Pacific time because that's where I am, so it might be slightly different. The dates might be a little bit different for you. So we're just going to get started. So Libra season starts off on September 22nd, and that marks the September equinox. So this, no matter where you are in the world, this is going to be a day of equal light and dark, where the day is as long as the night. So for us in the northern hemisphere, we're going to be tipping into more darkness, and for those in the south, we're going to be tipping into more light. But for this moment, we're going to be in equal balance. So that's going to be the equinox that's going to be starting up, and that's going to be the commencement of Libra season. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some basic Libra concepts that'll be coming up here. So Libra is an air sign, and so air signs are more usually about communication and thought and kind of our mental processes. And Libra is a really interesting sign. Libra works on the axis of relationships. So Libra is opposite Aries, and Aries is all about our relationship to ourself, our ego, our individual self. And Libra is about how we find our sense of self in relationship with another person. So relationship, often Libra can be related to romantic relationships and partnerships. It doesn't have to strictly be romantic. The basis of a Libra relationship is about a meeting of two equals. So it's not a relationship of like the parent to child relationship, or somebody in responsibility to somebody else, or someone who's in service to somebody else. Those are relationships that are not equal for a reason. The Libra relationship is about me and you on equal platforms coming together and understanding ourselves. And there's a great image with Libra of the mirror, of how we can see ourselves sometimes better when we are in relationship to somebody else and they mirror us and we mirror them. And it is through our relationships and community that we actually have a greater sense of ourselves. And then not just our sense of ourselves, but we are social beings, so our ego certainly matters, but we do also have to learn how we interact in community. And Libra, having followed after Leo and Virgo season, there's always a fun, really story arc through these seasons. For Leo, we learn about our own ego and we get to center ourselves in a very sort of like a healthy, self-centered way. Then in Virgo, we learn about maybe I should step off the pedestal and I'm going to actually center somebody else. I'm going to behave in service to somebody else and willfully subordinate myself to them. And then Libra takes that, Leo up here, Virgo down here, and says, now that we've learned how to navigate those things, let's meet each other as equals. Let's say that I'm important and you're important, and that we're going to be in the healthiest way we can be if we both see each other in that way. So that's one aspect of Libra, and we can look at that, and right away we even have the image of Libra's symbol, which is the balancing scales. Libra is symbolized by those justice scales, where we have things to be weighed here and see how things can be brought into balance. So this, of course, works super well with equinox, because equinox is the time when the night and dark, the light, is in balance with each other. So what I love to focus on and talk about both for equinoxes and for Libra season is the concept of balance as being a very dynamic process, and not a static point that we try to find where balance is this frozen point. So we can think about balance as sometimes as like finding that teeter-totter, like that, something's kind of tipping, oh, it's out of balance. And then we think of balance as when things have perfectly halted and nothing moves anymore. It's like balance in a snapshot of time. This is balance. But it's only in a moment. When we look at our dynamic lives, ourselves as individuals, our culture and society that moves through time, balance looks like this. Balance is the tipping back and forth between extremes, but overall, the whole unit stays balanced. It'd be unbalanced if it stayed here. But this is balance back and forth. And the term that I like to use, I work in healthcare, and so one of the terms we use a lot is homeostasis, which is where there is a window of health, not one specific pinpoint where this is the mark we're trying to hit. Actually, anything within these points of this extreme and that extreme, anything in here is healthy. So balance always looks like the swinging back and forth between these points, which is a very dynamic moment. So we could look over here for a minute and say, if we take a snapshot of a moment and say, oh, I'm actually pretty far to the extreme, does that mean I'm out of balance? When a day ago you take a snapshot and, oh, I'm out of here, does that mean I'm out of balance? Does that mean every moment except for that second I'm in the middle? is out of balance. Oh, now I'm in balance. Oh, and I'm out of balance again. No, if we look at balance as that only that minute when everything's 50-50, we're almost never in balance. We're always stressed trying to find that middle time. But if we look at balance as this homeostatic flow, this teeter-totter where all of this, everything that happens in this sort of wave function is a part of balance, then we suddenly can relax. We realize that balance is achieved over time. We realize that it is these forces going back and forth. And we don't have to stress out about the fact that every moment has to look like that moment in the middle or has to look like 50-50. Or when we pull it out into this concept of relationships with this Libra energy, balance or a healthy equal partnership doesn't mean 50-50 at all times. It doesn't mean every single day we share the exact same amount of speaking time, we share the exact same amount of the labor, we all spend exactly the same amount of money, we have the exact amount of problems. Like, that's not realistic. That's this kind of automaton feeling. And it brings a lot of shame if we kind of struggle with this idea of balance as having to look like this specific pinpoint way. There's so much more spaciousness and grace if we can understand that ebb and flow, and that balance in a relationship is sometimes I give more and sometimes you receive, and then sometimes you give more and I receive, and sometimes we both just kind of don't do anything, and sometimes we're both really activated, and all of these things. There's so much space actually where balance exists. It's only at the extremes when we're in crisis point, or maybe we're like, oh, okay, maybe this isn't very healthy. We need to look at what can bring us into more balance. So that's something that I've been thinking about a lot, is all these different areas in our life. Where can we bring in balance? And balance always starts, like I sort of mentioned, where we've gone through this Leo Virgo sort of step. Balance can really only be achieved with two sort of sovereign individuals who understand their own needs, at least a healthy balance. Libra as an archetype can sort of be seen as the like relationship codependent archetype, the one that's like, oh, I don't feel like myself unless I have another partner, or this feeling of I'm a half, an incomplete person until I find my other, equal opposite, and then we'll finally be whole together. And that feeling of unless we're together, I'm not a whole person. So I mean, there's all kinds of storylines and media that reinforces that idea of that romance or that true love, of that clicking together of these halves. But in general, my belief is certainly that that actually isn't very balanced, or it's not very sustainable, and it leaves you so vulnerable to, if the relationship doesn't work out, or if things feel like they're out of balance for a bit, of struggling with, if I don't have this other person, I don't fully exist, or I'm incomplete, or whatever it is, instead of bringing yourself into a relationship as a complete person, as a sovereign individual who has their own values and their own ego, that we've learned in this sort of Leo season here of I am an individual and you're an individual, and let's come together and build something really beautiful and balanced about that, that can sustain these sorts of ups and downs and won't be quite so fragile. And then that really can help us avoid those kind of codependent tendencies that can come up with Libra season, where it's just, I just need another partner, or I just, I don't feel like I exist unless I can see myself mirrored in somebody else. So the one other thing I'll touch on with Libra season, balance is the one that's really coming up for me mostly this season. But there's another aspect for Libra, which is similar, but it's the specific, the word justice. So where justice can be conflated with fairness and equality. We can think of balance. Okay, so I'm going to take a step back there. Justice and equality are often conflated as the same thing. Equality being everything's, equal, same for everybody. Justice being kind of like temperance, the right thing at the right time, what is deserved, what is good for all parties. And that justice is going to behave similar to that wave function. Justice is going to be a teeter-totter. Sometimes it's just to behave this way. Sometimes it's just to behave this way. Justice is not this static point where everybody gets the same thing. And it's really easy to conflate the two. And especially in Libra season, where we can over-focus on balance as a static point, or harmony at all costs, or I guess what is fair is if everybody has the same thing. And if I see somebody having something different than me, that means things aren't fair or things aren't just. Justice is a far more nuanced and dynamic concept, and it requires a lot of active thought. It's really kind of, I think, almost easy and lazy to fall into the equality trap of, as long as we can make everybody have the same thing, that's fair, because that's a counting game, really. It's a lot. It takes a lot less thought and effort to just flatten the board and say everybody gets the same thing, whereas justice requires always actually looking at the situation in front of you, the people in front of you, and bringing in a lot of wisdom and the potential to be wrong and the potential to make people upset, to really try to decide what is just for all people. It requires so much more work. The same way that this kind of homeostatic balance, there's a lot more moving parts than if we were to just freeze everything in this sort of solid component. So justice, homeostatic balance, a true relationship of sovereigns, all of that does take a little bit more work, but it's so much more vibrant, and it allows us to access the full healthy expression of Libra energy so much more than if we just sort of take those one-dimensional sort of equal across the board, or harmony is this static point, and just sort of like one dimensions everything, and then it looks really neat and tidy, but it doesn't have that dynamism, it doesn't have that life, and it doesn't also really leave space for the fact that we're not robots and we don't behave mathematically, and fairness isn't as easy as just balancing a math equation, and that we are human beings that have mistakes and pains, and we can't operate at 100% all the time, or we don't even know what 100% is. So I think that there's just a lot more grace available in our human interactions, and Libra season is all about our interactions with each other. And we can just come away with a little bit less stress, a little bit more grace, if we allow that sort of human kind of chaotic element in there and focus on the hard work, but the valuable work of justice, and taking each scenario as it comes. So that's my whole general Libra spiel. So I spent a lot of time on that, so we're gonna have to quickly get through the rest of these here. So that's the sun entering into Libra. So whenever the sun comes into a sign, the big light of the sun shines on it and illuminates those concepts. So we're gonna be seeing these concepts illuminated and coming up a lot more, both in their hopefully dynamic bright elements, but also some of these shadow elements where we might just try to make everything the same, or we might be having those codependent things, or we might be, one of the aspects of Libra can be desiring harmony so much that you're not comfortable with the conflict that sometimes is required to get there. So just saying, can we all just get along? Can we all just be nice? I just want to feel good. I don't want to get through conflict to the harmony on the other side. I just want to impose harmony right now. So that can be something that can happen. So sun enters Libra September 22nd. The next transit we have is Mercury is going to be entering into Libra, so following the sun pretty closely, on October the 4th. So Mercury is this planet of thought, communication, conversation. Mercury just spent a long time in Virgo doing his retrograde, so we've had a lot of time with Virgo concepts, and now Mercury gets to follow up and bring to light and bring to our conscious mind and our conversational prowess all of these Libra themes. So we're going to be wanting to talk about relationships more and think about them. We might be really wanting to engage in the conversations around justice and balance, and really we're not just kind of thinking about those or ignoring those. We really want to communicate with them. And now that Mercury is direct, we've got a lot of energy to be having those communications. Can go the other way though. We might be really just craving harmony and sort of using our voices to say like, hey, no, we want things to feel good. We don't want to be fighting. And that, there may be some of those voices as well that are just really wanting to. I've got like this little sunlight on my face here. I'm going to try not to get distracted by that. Oh well, if there it is, there it is. So these conversations are going to be coming up. You might be having a lot more conversations about relationships and in your relationships, especially. We are still in a retrograde season. We've just come through a few of them, including Mercury going direct. So that usually brings up a lot of things. People have been thinking about restructuring a lot of things, finding different values, sort of reestablishing where they want to be. And now we're going to be able to communicate about that more directly. So we might be finding that we're going to be changing our minds in how relationships go, or wanting to have these conversations a lot more. And it's a really good time to do that. Just try to remember that conflict is a part of two sovereign equals trying to make headway together and come into balance with each other. So this whole thing of arguing back and forth, or like, well, I don't know if I agree with you, or well, I'm sort of upset today, or maybe I want to talk today, but tomorrow I just kind of need to be angry. It's a process over time. Harmony and balance and justice happens over time. So if any specific days you feel like this doesn't feel like this is in balance, this feels so chaotic, maybe that's how it is that day. Maybe you're over here on the balance scale before things tip back. So just try to have a little bit of patience. Understand that as long as you keep trying and as long as you are treating each other with a sense of equal sovereignty and trying to find the just sort of thing to do, then that's the process that we're working with here. And it's going to, be complicated sometimes, and it doesn't always feel really nice, but it's in the long-term game is what we're playing with. So that's Mercury entering into Libra October the 4th. Then we have Venus, who's been in Leo for a while because she just had her retrograde. So she's been shining bright in Leo, teaching us all about sovereignty and our values and our relationships. Now she's going to be entering Virgo October the 8th. So Virgo, again, is this sign of service, is this sign of wanting to care for and tend to other people, the health and wellness of all things, really, our community, our ecosystem, our bodies, ourselves, our relationships. So Virgo, Venus in Virgo is going to be kind of coming. She's been illuminating so bright and is so aware of her needs and her desires and her sovereignty. And now we've spent so much time on our own sovereignty that now we've got it. We're solid. We don't have to waffle and be not sure about ourselves anymore. And we can take that confidence to then step out of the center stage and say, now, who is it that I can help? What is it that needs care? Does my body need care? Did my relationships need care? Where can I now put my active energy in service to work towards something? Virgo is very much a sign of work, of diligent work, of getting, it's the little habits that we do day in and day out that create a healthy long-term environment for us. So Venus is this planet of relationships and values. And so it's putting in the diligent work towards the health of the relationships that we want, the health of our bodies, making sure that, that our values are in that sort of healthy way. And that is I'm still dodging this little light here, is not just about ourselves anymore. So this is really kind of nice because we've got this overall Libra energy trying to bring things into balance. And Venus has spent so long in that Leo aspect that she's kind of like doing her own kind of Libra balance now by moving into Virgo and starting to think about this sort of service-oriented role. So that's going to be October the 8th. Then the next, I'm just going to briefly touch on this one. So this is Pluto is going direct October the 10th. So Pluto is, again, the furthest planet out in the solar system, which means that Pluto is going to be acting more on our overall kind of global situation. Pluto does work in our individual lives, but we don't see it quite as much. It's mostly like what is happening in the global and community sphere. So Pluto has been direct in Capricorn. Pluto was in Aquarius, went retrograde, left Aquarius, went back into Capricorn, and so now Pluto is going direct. So still in Capricorn, is going to start moving back towards Aquarius now. So Pluto is this planet of catalyst and transformation, usually through the destroying of the old way, the tearing it down, so that now there's space to reclaim and create something new. And Capricorn is a lot to do with our structure, our government structures, how we rule things, our sense of work ethic. So in a cultural global sense, this has a lot to do with our government structures, with our economic capitalist systems, and Pluto as the shaker, mover, upper, and destroyer has been really, throughout its transit for many years, has been shaking the globe in this way. So as Pluto is going direct, we may just start to see a little bit more of the results of those things. So things that have been kind of being shook up under the surface, we might start to see more of those sort of things coming to fruition. But I'm not a specialist on global events, so I'm just going to drop that one in there. And the quick note of how it may show up in your life again is Pluto tends to be the board wipe. So in your life, wherever you've got Capricorn themes, so that might be your workplace, or how you relate to creating wealth and finance and providership, and your energy as a provider, or the sort of provider structures in your life. This can be, for a lot of people, it's really, really looking at and changing how you make money, and so really maybe taking a look at your work life, if it's something you're interested in. For some people, that means a little shift, but because it's Pluto, for some people, it's just trash and burn it, whether that's under your, sorry, I got a little itch in my nose, I'm just getting at it here. So for some people, because Pluto can work in a very kind of destructive way. For some people, it might be burning bridges, whether you're the one in control of burning the bridge and saying, I'm never going back to that particular line of work and I'm moving forward, or whether the bridge is burnt for you and that job's no longer available, or you're fired, or something comes up in that livelihood and there's just doors being shut and that forces you in a different direction. So that may be the way that Pluto works in your life, if you notice Pluto working directly or not. So Pluto going direct in Capricorn, October the 10th. So the next transit we have is Mars is entering Scorpio on October 11th. So Mars is this planet of direct action and initiative. It's sort of seen as the masculine essence in our life, but really what that just means, it's not about gender, it's about the direction of energy. So Venus is the feminine, so it's inward receptive centered and it's our inner world more. Mars is this outer, how we initiate and act on the world in then an assertive way. So Scorpio is, I love Scorpio season, so I get a little excited about this. So Scorpio is actually very tied to those Pluto themes of the life and death cycle. So Scorpio here in the northern hemisphere, this correlates with sort of the middle of autumn, where things are starting to die and really starting to decay and go back into the soil, but they go back into the soil to renutrify, fertilize the earth, and then have that nutrition available in springtime when we want new life to come up. So Scorpio season is very much about death, to reclaim energy and nutrition, to then go back into the life cycle. So Scorpio itself is also very related to sex and childbirth, and the whole life cycle from sex, conception, birth, life, death, again, rinse and repeat is what Scorpio is concerned about. And Scorpio is also very much into, because it's working with death, it's these themes of the underworld, the unconscious, the things that are repressed and pushed down being brought up to life. So Mars coming into Scorpio, Mars is wanting to be direct about these things. So Mars might be in a very direct way taking us through these steps of life and death. So rather, this might be if we're just sort of thinking about things, or like thinking like, oh, this sort of thing maybe needs to die, or it's taking a lot of energy, or I want to birth something new, but I just don't have the space and energy for it. Mars is going to come in and be like, okay, time to not just talk about it. Time to make a cut, time to let things die, time to fight through with that. Mars as a planet often can sort of, it's also our combative warrior side. So Mars has been, and through a good chunk of this season, is in Libra. So Mars has been our justice warrior. It's been rattling the sabers and saying, things don't seem fair. I'd really like to rally and be assertive in the cause of justice. Now Mars is going to be taking that sort of warrior energy and looking at Scorpio themes, which is often what has been buried and repressed. What's been shoved in the closet? What is taboo that our culture is not going to talk about it? And I, Mars, I'm going to knock the door down and drag it out so that we can bring it to light. So there's not just in Scorpio season, not just this essence of life and death and rebirth, but there's very much the what has been repressed and pull it out. So Mars can be pretty aggressive sometimes. So in general, you always have the freedom and autonomy to make a choice, to do whatever you choose to do. I share a lot of these transits because that's the energy that's coming up. You can always swim against the current. It'll take a lot of work. You can still get where you want to go. But generally speaking, the invitation is to ride with the current. You'll be going so much faster, and it'll take you much less energy if you recognize the energy for where it's going and then plot your course accordingly. So as Mars starts to shake up and wants to open up the things that maybe have been tucked away, especially right while Mercury and we've got these other things in Libra that are bringing up a lot of relationship conversations, wanting to talk and address the things that maybe have come up in the retrograde season, and then Mars is coming in and saying, we're not going to hide things anymore. We're going to pull it up. So the invitation, because Scorpio season can get intense for a lot of people, and usually that intensity comes from the resistance, resisting the intensity, resisting the things coming up. And that's when you have the suffering come in. So Mars is going to bring in, yes, a degree of intensity here, rattling the sabers and wanting to open up those closets. And that if you ride that energy, can be such a relief to get that shit out of the closet that's been there. You know it's in your mind, you know it's there, it annoys you, and you're always nervous about it coming out. So this invitation is to just to do the work, just to clean it out. Mercury wants to talk about it and talk about it in a really healthy, balanced way. And so this is part of that balance. As always, balance is over this sort of period of time, and repression of things and tucking things away is tipping in one direction, unbalanced, and so bringing it back up is bringing it back into bringing that back into balance. So the one thing to be mindful of, because again, Mars can get pretty combative, and the dark side of Scorpio can be being very vindictive, can be very vengeful, and seeing all of that that's been repressed, and then like going on a warpath with it and being so angry about it. So we want to try to remember justice in this case, and not, you know, just hold the chains on Mars a little bit, so that we don't get into that destructive Scorpio energy, which is very intense and can be, yeah, just sort of that focus on vengeance of not being able to forgive and forget, and instead sort of taking that wound of, oh, you've hurt me, I'm going to hold this against you forever. So we really want to utilize the healthy warrior Mars here of saying, hey, I'm not going to let you hide this, but not go so far into, and how could you ever do this? I'm going to hold this against you forever. So that's the Mars in Scorpio on October 11th. And then our last transit that we're going to talk about, and then I'll just give a quick mention of the moon dates here, is Mercury is going to be following Mars into Scorpio on October 21st. So again, Mercury is this planet of conversation and connection through voice and expression. So now Mercury is going to want to join Mars and talk about these things. So it's a really great time to express. It's a great combo. The Mars and Mercury is a very powerful combination. So hopefully, again, we're engaging it in the more positive aspects, because Mars is let's do it and Mercury is let's talk about it. So when those things are lined up, that means our actions and our words can be in synergy. So we're not just doing things and bashing through and not explaining ourselves, but we're also not just talking, but not doing anything about it. So the Mars and Mercury in Scorpio combo is really, really great for dealing with old shit, dealing with traumas, dealing with things that have been swept under the rug that nobody wants to talk about, because we're going to talk about it and we're going to take action about it. So again, the important thing is to mitigate and manage some of the darker intensities that can come up, which is, that sort of aggravated anger component. And then, you know, if Mercury comes in there too, then that can be spiteful words. That can be being, you know, pretty backstabby or angry in our communication. So we want to, harness always the positive aspects and just keep watch on those kind of darker tendencies that can slip out. So that's going to be Mercury entering Scorpio October 21st, bringing those conversations and the ability to, again, still in this Libra context. So it's all about balance. And it can be really easy, again, for Libra to just want things to be harmonious, peaceful, loving. We're also happy here. So Scorpio energy can feel pretty aggravating to Libra if Libra is looking at hyper focus on harmony, with forgetting that true balance and true justice contains the darkness, contains intensity, contains the balance of allowing that which has been repressed to have its voice, or the balance of life and death, light and dark. They have to be in balance together, otherwise it's not just. So a healthy Libra is going to welcome in what Mars and Mercury are going to pull in from Scorpio season, and show us, and it's going to really give us this chance to let's just balance it all out. Man, it's all part of life. It's all part of this process here. So that's the invitation, to keep the grace, to keep the patience, to keep the understanding that balance is a game that 99% of being in balance looks out of balance mathematically, because it's not that pinpoint. So it's seen over time. So that is the transits happening. Give you quick dates here for the moon. Not going to talk about them that much. So your full moon in Aries is going to be September 29th. And then we're into eclipse season. So since the nodes have shifted, I talked about the nodes shifting a couple seasons ago. Our north and south nodes, which is what determines what signs the moon eclipses are in, is now in Libra and Aries. So our new moon solar eclipse, so that's the solar eclipse is when, you know, the moon comes in front of the sun, that's going to be in Libra Libra on October 14th. And then the next eclipse that closes it out will be in the next season. So full moon, Aries, September 29th, new moon, eclipse in Libra, October 14th. Okay, so those are the transits that'll be happening here. And so I'm just going to shuffle. We're going to get ourselves a card for the reading collectively for Libra season. So just going to shuffle till something comes out. This is the classic time to mention that I am a settler living on Indigenous lands here on the Pacific Northwest. The Esquimalt and Songhees people here, the Lekwungen speaking nations here in Vancouver Island, and I am deeply grateful for the land that I live on and being able to do my work and my life here. And I acknowledge that I wasn't here first, and I have a lot of benefits here that I only get to experience because it has been taken away from other people that were here first and stewarded the lands here. So I'm just going to mention that here. I've got a card for us for Libra season, all right? So Libra season, oh, this is a great one for Libra season. We have the Two of Swords reversed. So this is how he came out, and this is the way he looks here. So we have this figure, and he's sitting down, he's blindfolded. He's got these two swords in his hand, and in front of him he has this book on a pedestal. Down below we have this cow or bull here, and it looks like on the inside there's like some boats on an ocean in his stomach there. Got a little moon up here. And he was upside down like this. So, all right. Those are cups. Where's the swords? Swords. Okay, here we go. Two of Swords. New insights. This card shows that your thoughts and your discerning powers are in the process of transcending your previous limits. The moon at the top of the card represents the cycles of life. The bull, cow or calf, in the lower part of the picture stands for your physicality, for your moods and irritability, as well as your sense of security and tranquility. Subtle sentiments and unexpressed needs demand your attention. Unvoiced desires and fears await a response. And yet those louder and more insistent opinions and intentions are in no less need of closer scrutiny. You need to use the weapons of your mind, thinking, knowing, and discerning, to probe your emotions and wants. The blindfold warns against the lack of attention or inadequate mental vigilance. And yet the blindfolded eyes also represent impartiality and the transition to a more spiritual vision. The frontiers of the realm of the mind, within which your current questions are focused, are to be found beyond the concrete and the obvious. The body of the bull contains drawings of several little boats depicting a voyage or a maritime battle, perhaps. If you consider the bull, the picture of a saint at the center of the picture, and the moon above is representing the sum total of a human being, you will note, down below in the realm of the unconscious or in the lower abdomen, there is growing unrest. Little boats move to and fro in the waves. In the middle region, the realm of your normal waking consciousness, everything is clearly defined, but also rather rigid. Noble aims and ideals represented by the moon float overhead. The challenge is to penetrate new spaces with the weapons of your mind and to shed the light of consciousness on all aspects of your personality. Practical advice. Do not become entrenched in uncertainty. Do not pretend to be blind or to not understand. Expand your horizons. Search within to grow beyond yourself. Okay, so I love this one for Libra season because, of course, in the expanded concept of the ideas of justice, the symbol of justice is the blindfolded woman who has the sword and she has the scales. So already with Libra season, we're dealing with the scales, and there's this sort of essence of justice has often been seen as being dispensed with the sword. And the idea of justice being blind or impartial, of course, is so that we don't have this sort of unfair or biased sort of thing there. So having here, we have this idea of the blindfolded justice, which in this case we're seeing that it kind of has a positive and a negative aspect. So we have the idea of being impartial, where you're not looking and favoring one side and seeing what's going on there. But the downside is being blindfolded. You can't always see what's in front of you. So there's this image is this, we can utilize we want to have that impartiality, but we also don't want to just sort of like pretend that we can't see what's in front of us, and just like, oh, no, I don't know what's going on. Swords as a suit are about the mental realms, and so thinking, communicating, and so that fits well. Libra is an air sign, and swords correlate with air. So we're really talking about using our mental prowess here to be able to discern. The key word here is discernment. And in order to discern, we need to take the insights, the things that we've seen into a situation. We take those insights, we work them with our minds, and then we make a discerning choice. We make a cut. We choose to do this or that. We choose justice one way or another. We deliver a sentence. But we've got more than just that. We have this image of some sort of ocean situation going on, as this cow is described as being part of the unconscious, as it's down below, and that there's something happening here. And to me, that's bringing in the fact that we're having some planets moving into Scorpio, and Scorpio loves to deal with the unconscious realm. It's saying, what's down here? What is it that we aren't really able to see very well? What is it that we're looking up here, and so we miss what's down here? And they're starting to make some waves and saying, hey, notice me here. There's something going on here. So this card's really saying, okay, like, we're going to start to feel some things that are coming up and are going to want to start to bubble up into our vision. And then up here in our conscious realm, we're trying to make choices. And it's very mental. We're trying to make sense of things and make decisions. But we don't want this to be split in half. It's very easy to sort of stay in the mental realm and try to engage in our conscious life, and then have that split where our unconscious is trying to send us symbols, trying to get our attention. But if we're not choosing to listen, and we're not really asking and trying to get that to come up into our insight so that we can engage with it consciously as well, then we're stuck with the split. We're out of balance, where we have our conscious existence and then our unconscious sort of things that are going to be driving us, and or that we're going to be repressing in that kind of dark scorpionic way, and we're not connected in that way. And in order to get sort of up above to these sort of ideals that we're trying to engage with, we need to bring those two into balance. We need to connect the two. We need to be able to have this conversation, the upwelling from the unconscious mind that brings symbols and insights to our conscious mind, where then we get to make decisions, we make discernments, and then the actions and consequences of those choices are going to feed back into us and be received, and unconsciously then they'll come back into that soup there. So it's always going to be this sort of the sine wave, this balance, this back and forth. And if we can bring these into harmony, and we can bring that conscious and unconscious space together, where we're then going to be able to, as I talked about, there's unexpressed needs that are wanting our attention. There's desires and fears that are saying, hey, please pay attention to me. In some ways, we can see that as our conscious mind as being the judge sitting in the courtroom. And we have so many different parts of our being that are trying to have their space on the stand, that want to say, this is what I really want. This is what I'm really afraid of. This is what I'm really angry about. And they're all sort of trying to have their day in court. And so we, in our conscious mind, ideally, we're going to sit there. We're going to have, hopefully, that healthy impartiality where we haven't pre-decided that, well, these emotions are healthy and these ones are bad, or these conscious things we are engaged with, but I don't really like what's tucked away in the unconscious, and so I'm going to, defer here. That would be a judge that we wouldn't really trust. We really want to be able to, in our conscious setting, be able to look at each scenario that we're faced with that fresh sense. Like I talked about at the very beginning, justice is a lot of work. It requires you to be present with what is in front of you, and not just sort of default into the way that things have been done before, so I'll just kind of pull it up and slap that on. Or this idea of, well, fairness, it's the exact same one size fits all. This is what should be done, so you shut up and you step forward, and that's just the way it's done, and that'll be even and fair, and everybody gets the same thing. It requires so much presence. And in the outward world, when we're engaging with other people, it's certainly in this Libra season, we are engaging with other people. And so being present is going to be able to honor other people and hopefully help us have really fruitful relationships. But all of that is really also starting with this internal space we have. Our relationships are the mirror of ourselves. And so we are going to sit in this courtroom of our public opinion and our social groups and have to make these discernments, but that's all starting in ourselves as we sit as the judge in our conscious courtroom, and we have these different voices that are coming up. how are you going to treat them? Are you going to have this concept of justice? Do you already have things that you're not listening to? Are you welcoming things that are maybe a little dirty and uncomfortable and don't speak with the diction that you'd like because you don't understand them? There's all kinds of things that are going to come up. So this invitation with this card is like, hold court. Hold court inside yourself and do it in a way that you feel really proud of, that you feel like justice is served for yourself, that you can trust that the person, which is you in the seat of control here that makes these discernments and directs the course of action, is somebody that you're like, oh, thank God that person's on the stand. They're going to give me a fair trial and justice will be served. And then that is going to ripple outward and bring us into this long lasting desire that we have for homeostasis and justice and balance and all of that really yummy stuff that we can only get to on the other side of this nitty gritty, difficult, conflict, challenging, muddling our way through, trying to find justice in each moment. So I'm going to leave it with that because otherwise I will, as always, go off on all of that stuff. So that's that. That is our Libra season forecast. I hope that was really helpful for you to support you through this time. Starting with equinox here, time of balance. Which I really like to talk about. So speaking of balance and being in healthy reciprocal relationships, I give this lovely gift to you to help you through this time. And it's really lovely to receive the gifts and financial support from you for the Pay What You Can donation link down below. Thank you so much for being generous with that. Really helps me keep making this lovely stuff for you. Thank you so much. Best of luck in Libra season. Happy equinox, everybody, and I will see you next month.